4, 3.
We'll do it live.
Now we're live! Erin, Kennedy, the general craziness of it, the impact on your life.
We have gone through so many stories and we said, you know what? This should not be kept to the two of us.
I was ready this time. Erin, Kennedy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm
Good.
like rested, as we always mention when we talk to each other. How are you doing? Great. I've had
Rested.
plenty of sleep.
I know. Foreign to us.
Yeah,
We want to tell everybody this one is pre-recorded because summer is bananas, just like I'm sure it is for everybody at home. But we are
crazy.
still efforting live shows. But thank you to everybody who's watching the recording.
Yes.
Please like and
And
subscribe
for-
our YouTubes.
For those of you who may happen to just be listening, I am wearing a t-shirt, which would never have been allowed. And Erin is definitely out of code.
Oh my goodness. This is wrong for so many reasons. Shoulders,
You see them?
deep V.
V.
Now I always said though, Megan, I could get away with deeper V's than you could because you had a racy deep V. Mine is just sternum, you know? So it's okay.
Right.
You know?
I was putting a little more in my deep V, and honestly, that didn't go over well
Yeah.
occasionally. Yeah.
So
Rules
anyway,
subject to body type, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know what's great? I did a deep dive and I found some old wardrobe guidelines. So that will be a separate episode.
Yes.
But for those of you who know, I don't know Instagram. And I thought I was sending Megan a post and I was actually sending it to my stories, but now I've deleted it. So
Can I just say that's one thing that I have always loved about you, Erin? Like, you embraced what you needed to do on social media, but only
And
because
no
you
more.
had to. You didn't love
It's
it.
so true. I did not. No, it's hard. And that should be another episode because I felt like every time I would post, and same for you, like the third comment was always like mean or sexual. And I just didn't want to open myself up to that. So
I know. I just kind of ignored that part because I did like, and still do, like the social media stuff. I just, maybe it's because I like to talk and I feel it's another place to do it, sort of.
right.
But yeah, I always embraced it. But we were, in many cases, made to do it with no option
Mandated.
to the contrary. Yeah.
Yes.
So we can talk about that. That's a whole other episode as well. But I think
Yes.
the recurring theme that you may be all sensing, and the topic of today, is the fact that we were in such a world where there was so little control over what we said, what we wore, what we did, how we ate, when we went to the bathroom, all of that stuff, holidays, vacations, that it permeated every little facet of your life, even if you didn't realize it. And when you get out, it's a trip.
It really is a difficult transition. And we call it TV PTSD because we're still dealing with it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we were constantly under the microscope, not only by viewers, but also our bosses and consultants and people giving us feedback all the time. And so we wanted to do a deeper dive in our contracts, right, Megan?
Yes. And I think it's
And
important
bring it because I have many.
Oh, I mean, I have a file cabinet, which I couldn't carry
Right.
over here.
Right.
I've had many jobs, but I feel like it's important probably for us, Erin and I are realizing, for us to set the stage, because there's a lot of what we inherently know because we lived in that world for so long that you might not know. So in some of these episodes, we're going to break it down so that those questions that keep coming to us are answered up front. And then you can apply it to like everything else we talk about moving forward, like understanding a little bit more about what we had to do and how it worked.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, we're going to also dovetail this into the Great Resignation, how a lot of people, COVID forced us to kind of reevaluate our priorities. And Megan, we said this already, that you and I loved what we did. We really did. And we were very good at it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can say that objectively because we were in the third largest market in the US. We got more TV offers that we, turned down because we realized what we were sacrificing to be in the industry.
Yes. And I think part of that coincided with COVID. And when that hit on top of us getting laid off /fired / whatever you want to call it, all of that kind of like combined to make you reevaluate your life in all the ways. I think if we had just been laid off, we would have reevaluated, but it would have been like the world was still ticking without us. No, we happened to get laid off when the whole world had stopped. So you can kind of sit back and go, hold up a second. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to wake up at 2:00 in the morning. I don't want people to be in control of every single thing I say and do.
Or move again in the middle of a pandemic when you're probably going to be moving again because your contract will be up and the new news director won't like you.
Let's talk about the fact that as a woman, on top of it all, you have a shorter job on the air life expectancy than a man does. And it's just the fact of the matter. I mean, and you see the same thing reflected in Hollywood. There are exceptions to every rule, but generally speaking, we had that conversation for years of like, okay, at some point, we're not going to be the young, cute one anymore, and they might kick us to the curb.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is what happened. Although I think you're old and cute now, Megan.
Well, thanks. You too. I don't know. I don't want to. Hey, we're not old. Older, for sure.
No, I know, but it is true. So
yeah,
let's kind of, let's talk about this a little bit because I do think that people don't understand that these contracts are made to protect the station, not the employee. Okay. We hired agents. I hired an agent kind of halfway through my career because there's so much legal mumbo jumbo to move through this that you really need an advocate on your side because it's too much almost without them.
Yep.
But agents get, mine did, 7% of every paycheck.
And it's every paycheck. You can negotiate the agent percentage down to a certain degree, but I would say it ranges anywhere from like as low maybe as 5%, as high as more than 10%. And if you're a newbie in the business and you are desperate to get with a particular agency, they probably know that. And depending on how much they want you, you may or may not be able to negotiate that number down at all. And then picture the fact that your job may not pay you as much as everybody thinks TV people make. And then you got to pay your agent on top of it.
Right. Okay. Well, just because we're doing full disclosure, and I think we should do another one on salaries. Yeah. This is my Rhode Island contract. So I was coming from Texas where I made 18. And then I got promoted to morning anchor, and then I made 28. So when they offered me 34 to come to Rhode Island, I was like, I'm going to have money coming out of my ears. This is great. And that's a top 50 market.
But basically that meant, that felt like that to you. But what that really meant was you didn't have to have a second job that time.
Right. Because I was teaching classes at the local Gold's Gym in Lubbock, Texas.
Yes. And the thing that you need to understand about these TV contracts, because Erin said it, it's way, very, very much one-sided, where in many instances, TV people will have something called a window. So you may have a 3-year contract, but they'll have a window every couple months or a window at the end of each year, whatever it may be. And in that window, they can get rid of you just because they want to get rid of you. So the contract is really not protecting you too much as the quote unquote talent, which I always hated that word. It felt like weird to me. Like I'm a person and I don't, and it makes you feel like like you're really super egotistical. The talent. Yeah. I hated it.
It did take some getting used to. Yeah.
Yep.
I think you bring up so many great points, Megan. But yes, I think that people don't understand too that a lot of TV stations now, in fact, 2 of which I applied for after Chicago, one was in Nexstar and one was Sinclair. And Nexstar and Sinclair are now, they own more and more stations. In fact, there's been, questions of, is this a monopoly? Because they own a lot of local news stations. They both had 60-day clauses, which means that, yes, you may sign a 4-year contract, but you come up every 60 days, right? So either they give you 60 days notice or 60 days pay. So essentially a 4-year contract would just be an agreement that your salary will be that every 4 years if they keep you.
So picture, guys, in the business to move up, in other words, to get to a bigger market, which also usually means more money, you have to move. So let's say you're situated and you absolutely love living in Lubbock, but you want to make more money and you got to move somewhere to do it. So then you get an offer and you end up going to Wilmington, North Carolina. You pick up your whole family, your whole life, you sell your whatever you have there, probably can't afford a house, but pretend. You sell it, you move. You have a 4-year contract, which really means maybe you have a couple month contract because if they don't like you, they could get rid of you because there's a window. So there's like zero security and tons of moving.
Right. And most contracts are 2 years.
Yep. Sometimes back in the day when we started, though, they
not me. I never did, but
okay. So the longest one I ever had, I think, was like a 3-year, 9-month contract because they didn't operate on a calendar year. It was like a 15-month cycle.
Yeah. Interesting. So the longest I had, it was called a 2-year firm with the option to renew for a third. And so when I was in Cleveland, they did not renew me for that third. And that was also when I was 3 months pregnant. That's another episode. So I just want people what we want to communicate is that it's really stressful with the axe hanging over your head at any moment.
Yeah, because, and like we said, when we were chatting with Lionel in an earlier episode, it may not be anything you're doing wrong. So like you really actually have no idea. It could be as simple as this. New news director comes in. You're doing a great job. They could love you in the market. But by the market, I mean the TV station you're working at. However, said news director who's brand new really, really liked the weather person that he had at his old television station.
Right.
And he knows her contract's coming up in 3 months. They'll keep you around till that window, bust you out of there because he wants to put in his friend or his person he worked with before. So it may not even have anything to do with how you're doing or how you're liked in the market, but just like those relationships. It stinks.
Yeah. There's
and
no
deliverable. You have to move, Erin. Like if you want to stay in a city, you may or may not have an opportunity to do that.
So, I mean, regardless of staying or leaving, Megan, you want to be a morning meteorologist, let's say. Megan, how many morning meteorologists are there in Chicago?
Like probably 4. And then maybe you add some of the little newer network stuff. There may be a few more. But let's say you want to do Monday through Friday weather. But one of those people has to be getting fired or leaving at the exact same time that you can start negotiating, or your agent's trying to plan it. And it is like such a game of chess to figure out how to get where you want to go. You have to be like, super in demand.
Yeah.
It's really difficult.
Because in the contract, it's known as exclusivity. You are only allowed to negotiate with another station during the last 3 months of your contract. So you have to hope that in that, if you're right. Wink, wink.
Just saying.
You have to hope that there's an opening where you want to go in those 3 months.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I can't tell you how many times I did this with my husband, Matt, Megan. I would be like, all right, we got Orlando on the table. We have Cleveland on the table. We have, some other random city. Where do you want to go?
Where do you want to live in? And you know nothing about it. And by the way, it's not like fancy where they'll fly you and your family out to like double check if you like the area and check the schools. And it's like, you're lucky to have this offer. You want it, take it or leave it. Oh, and by the way, we need to know by the end of the week because
end of the week. Yeah. In a couple days. Yeah.
Yeah. Every job I took, I needed to be there like 3 months before I even possibly could. So there's no break in between jobs to clear the air or even move appropriately. You're like living in temporary housing until you can get somewhere to live. I mean, it is like, it's like a hamster wheel.
Well, I truncated my maternity leave to come to Chicago.
You what?
When I remember when we first met, Megan, and I was 9 months pregnant interviewing.
No, and you did such a good job. And I was like, I remember thinking at the time, this poor woman is having to interview and go through this whole process, which an interview process in TV, you could literally have to talk to 12 people in one day and read the news. And it's super stressful. And here you are.
I was 2 days away from not being allowed to get on an airplane. Yeah.
Oh,
so I think that the whole interview process should be another show because it is grueling.
Yeah. It is.
And subjective.
Yes. But you're absolutely right about what you were saying. Like you don't really, it's not like you look at the country and say, gosh, I'd really like to live in Wilmington or LA or something like that. It's like, okay, where's there an opening? How does the timing work? Where is it possible for me to go? Can I get the job? Who's paying me the most? What's the cost of living? How's all that work? And then you're like, okay, best chance is, I guess we'll take that one. Which is why New York or LA.
Right.
And the money was sort of comparable, but then they threw some more stuff over here. And that, what would my life have looked like if I would have taken a completely opposite coast? Because you're not making tiny decisions. You're making like mammoth, life-altering, completely different city decisions.
Well, I think Lance said it best. You know, it's fantasy football with your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Looking back on it, it's so weird the way the whole process works.
And what's nice is just hopping off the merry-go-round, is when you can just say, I realize I am sacrificing too much. I'm going to pass. And then
it was hard. We had that conversation for many years before we were pushed off the merry-go-round.
before it ran us over.
Yeah. How many times did I tell you, Erin, I really want out, but I think I'm going to have to get fired to quit? Because by the time you get to Chicago, the salary's good, you're used to it, and you feel very much like there's nothing else you can do because I've only done TV. Well, we now know that the skills pass through in so many ways and make you really marketable and valuable in lots of different places. But when you're in that little world, it's almost like an abusive relationship where you don't really understand your worth because you're always being told you're lucky to be here. They can get rid of you at any moment. They can treat you however they want to treat you. You put up with it because you feel like they've convinced you you're lucky to have the job. And then when you get out, you're like, huh, right?
Well, yes. And I mean, two of those things that are in the contract, one of them is other duties as assigned. That's what we always called it, right? So if you needed to go and scrape the snow off the satellite dish on top of the roof, that's your other duties as assigned. Then you go and do it.
Never had to actually do that though.
I never had to actually do that. But because I have TV PTSD, I got a scam email, which was coming from like my current boss now. And it said, I need you to run to Dunkin' Donuts and buy me some gift cards. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And I was like, wait a minute, I think this is a scam.
But you would. Because that is the way it worked. It was so random. Like, we need you to go to Walgreens for the entire day and you need to be working your regular shift. And then you need to go do like an event at Walgreens, which will last until 10. And we need you to stay till 11 to do the next show. Well, so duties as assigned, maybe you need to work 14 days straight because we don't have a fill-in. That happened a lot more probably in weather than for you because there were fewer of us.
Right. Well, and weather was often, this is when we talk about the contracts and it says, you know, what is it? Basically, you are at our beck and call at all times. I can't remember the legal mumbo jumbo, but it will say like for breaking news or big events. Well, then remember, Megan, they were going to define breaking news as like a snow flurry. And then they can tell you to stay late. Yeah.
That there's a lot of room for the definition to change within that contract. But once again, it's not in favor of the talent. So let's say you get called in to do something that wasn't in your normal job responsibilities and you had plans or you had a trip or you had somewhere you had to take your kid. Okay. You were just expected to drop it because there's a snowstorm. I don't care what's happening in your life.
Megan, can we please disclose how you had a recent interview and they were asking how old your kids were now and then said,
oh, good. You don't need to be there for them all the time anymore. Like,
yeah, they're older now.
They're older. They don't need their mom so much. And I was like, oh my God, that they need me more now than they needed. I mean, they need me, period. I hope. And I want to be there for them. Even if they think they don't need me anymore. Like, even if they can feed themselves. And it was looked at as more like it wasn't even said in a mean way or anything. No. It was like, oh, yay, we can have you now because your kids are old enough so you won't need to be there for them.
Right.
What?
Can they pour themselves a bowl of Cheerios?
You're good. Come on in. They don't need you anymore. And that's a lot of I think we should talk about this in a separate episode, but I can't even tell you how many people who, when I was working the morning shift, were like, oh, you can just get a better shift. Well, there kind of isn't a better shift if you're a mom.
Because the other shift is 2 p.m. to 11 or midnight. So you're missing them when they're home.
Yeah.
You may be able to have breakfast with them, but that means that you're doing it on maybe 4 hours of sleep.
And think about that breakfast rush to get the kids on a bus to get ready for school anyway. Right. That is not quality time.
Mm-mm.
Everybody's tired. They're crabby. They're in a hurry. They're barely getting up in time. You're throwing stuff in a book bag and then they're gone. And then you don't see them until the next day when you do that again. I know a lot of people who had that kind of relationship with their kids because they almost maybe had no other choice.
Mhm.
It isn't easy. And the mom guilt in that job is like insane.
Well, and even though we worked mornings, we could spend time with our kids in the afternoons, but it was,
At our expense.
I would have to nap and
Yeah.
then I would turn into a crazy irrational monster a lot of evenings because I was sleep deprived.
Oh my God. Yes. And it's literally like I would go home and be like, okay, I can do this now. But I was exhausted. So you know that feeling like you take a flight somewhere and there's jet lag going on, like maybe you go to Europe or you go somewhere and there's jet lag. That is how it feels to work the morning shift every day. You never get enough sleep. And on the weekend, you fall asleep watching every movie that there ever was.
Every show.
Everything. Like I didn't watch TV for that entire like 15-year off and on morning show shift situation.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't stay awake.
Yeah.
So you talk about like time with your significant other because that's non-existent too.
Well, we would do brunches or lunches because I would still be incoherent by 7 p.m. on a weekend.
But let's be honest, aren't you like almost kind of incoherent anyway? Like think if you're totally sleep deprived for 5 days straight, you don't catch up in 2 days.
No,
And
and your body's conditioned still. Yeah.
And then try going to bed Sunday night to wake up at the butt crack of dawn on Monday. Because you're
miserable. The Sunday scaries are also very real. And, I just want to remind everybody watching, this is not Megan and I being sour grapes. We loved what we did. This is more, we want to do a peek under the hood at what goes into TV news, because I think a lot of people think it's wonderful and glamorous and we're pampered. And in a lot of ways, it is such an awesome job, but it is also really taxing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's super stressful, and more so than that, because eventually you get to the point where you don't get nervous going on TV anymore because you've covered every type of thing there is, and it's just like maybe with some slight difference to it. So you don't get nervous anymore. But I feel like it's a grind on a daily basis to do the same thing, the same way, with the same hits, different weather, different stories, but every day. And then the impact on your life is like insane.
Right.
I didn't realize. And in the next episode, let's talk about really, because we've talked about kind of the drama of it. Let's talk about what happens when you don't do it anymore.
Yeah, we will. And we are trying to keep this episode a little bit shorter because I used to think that Megan was cool. And then she said to me, we need to do an A/B test. And I said, who is this person? So she wants to do a shorter episode that talk about something you never would have said in TV news.
Never. I didn't know what it was. There's lots of things I didn't know what it was. Like, can you make an Excel spreadsheet? Hell no. What is that?
What's a PowerPoint? Never made a PowerPoint.
Let's work on a business plan. Okay. What is a business plan? And what does that entail? Like,
that's when you go to the dictionary.
Thank
I guess we look it up
YouTube.
Now. Yeah. The only other thing that I wanted to show people, because this was such an emotional decision for both of us, I saw this Venn diagram on LinkedIn. I know, lame, but it really spoke to me because I think with the Great Resignation, a lot of us have tried to find that middle of the diagram, right? Your passion, of course. And so TV news, when I looked at it through this lens, checked a lot of those boxes for me. Really good at it. Really enjoyed it, loved it, right? Really loved working with smart, capable, fast people. But when I looked at what was not aligned, it was not the right lifestyle fit, not right for my values, right? Non-work priorities, friends, family, relationships, health. What? I was like, oh, that's way off the diagram.
I also always felt like because of the rules and the way it was and the kind of like, okay, dial it down a little bit, Megan. We need this from you, Erin. You got to do this, blah, blah, blah. We can't be so excited. You got to take this serious, whatever that may be. I always felt like I was leaving like a huge chunk of myself on the table, so that just felt like I never got to give the whole Megan. And that gets really frustrating after a while, because you're like, what would happen if I could really be like the full me, Like maybe it's a lot for people. I don't know. But either way, Did you feel like that too? Maybe it's because I didn't get to. I was like just doing weather, so maybe that's why. I don't know.
So I did get some feedback too, which again is the lamest thing. We want to see more Erin. And I was like, okay. So they gave me kind of carte blanche to go and cover some stories that I was really interested in. Yeah, not that kind of more Erin. But I did an in-depth piece on sexism and misogyny in video games.
Okay.
Right? Loved
So
it.
interesting.
And they were like, oh, no. Sorry, that's not what we meant. Is that Erin? Oh, never mind. That's not what we wanted.
Right. Not that Erin, not the real Erin, the fake Erin that we wish you'd be. Okay, thanks. Now go do a story about that.
Well,
Okay,
literally, I was told that I needed to be more folksy. I'm a lot of adjectives, Megan.
That's not one.
That's not one of them. And you knew that when you hired me.
Yes, because you have semi-in-depth conversations about things where they really know what they're getting. They don't care because probably you looked like and sounded like the person that they could mold you to be, Erin.
Right.
Like, it's like, she looks how we want. She's smart and she's good on TV. This isn't
Now
really
we'll
what we
tell her to be
want, but we'll
folksy.
just make her be that way.
Yeah. Didn't work. Anywho, that is all for now, right? With TV PTSD. Yeah. And again, we just want to thank everybody who is liking and subscribing. Please tell your friends so that we can keep doing this and indulging in our
liking the real us. As we're still trying to figure out what the heck that is.
But yeah, and keep on commenting and questions because we will do our very best to answer them.
Yep. And we are going to have a very special guest at an upcoming moment. It's just like we said, summer schedules are wild. So.
Yeah. And so a lot of people were asking about Marissa and she had a conflict. So she will be on. Fear not. All right. Good stuff, Megan.
You too.
Say bye.
Bye.